The quarterfinals are set, and it is time to preview these matchups for Concacaf as 6 spots for next summer's Copa America are on the line. Guys, Matty G back here with you on Football with Flags. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get to it. Now, guys, remember the quarterfinals for this CONCACAF Nations League span over 2 legs to determine which teams advance to the semifinal. So we wanted to take a look back at each individual matchup and share with you the results of how these teams did against one another over their last 2 fixtures. And we'll start off with Honduras and Mexico, who played in March of 2022. Mexico would go on to win that game 1-0. And then back in June, these two met in the Gold Cup. Mexico beating Honduras, I believe, on opening night of that tournament 4-0, thumping in that second leg. So in total, Mexico, their last 2 fixtures have won on aggregate 5-0. We'll start off with some notes on each of these teams. Honduras, unfortunately, have only had 2 shots on frame the last 180 minutes that these 2 teams have met. They have got to be better defensively. Honduras played in a 4-2-3-1 in their 4-0 loss, but they played in a 4-5-1 in their 1-0 loss back last year. I would love to see Honduras potentially play in that 4-5-1 defensively in this 2-legged playoff against Mexico, and then maybe look to transition into something like a 4-2-3-1 once they're moving forward, just trying to push more numbers into the attack, get the ball wide, and keep possession more. But obviously we know Mexico wants to start fast. They love to come out quickly, and obviously Mexico's going to look to press high as well, look to try and create turnovers against Honduras in their own half and counter on those as much as possible. But for Honduras, they've got to try and break the flow of play. Mexico love to have high energy games. They love to, have an open game, get numbers forward, get the crowd involved, make it very exciting, look to score early. Honduras have got to find ways through their possession, through the ball being out of play. I hate to say it, but time wasting at times as well. Anytime they get a foul, slowing the game down unless they feel they have an opportunity, and really just trying to take advantage of not allowing Mexico to get in any type of flow in this game. But certainly Honduras also have to be aware of Mexico when it comes to set pieces. We know how dangerous Mexico can be with those, whether it's corners, free kicks, even potentially throw-ins down in the final third. They can be very dangerous with. So keep that all in mind when these 2 teams square off coming up in November. Next matchup, we have Costa Rica taking on Panama, which is always an intriguing fixture. Last couple of times these 2 teams faced off, first was in March, Panama winning that game 1-0, and then in June, the opener in their group stage for the Gold Cup, Panama winning that game 2-1. Costa Rica had 6 shots in both of those games. Not a lot of attempts for either of those 90 minutes. Would love to see them be more dangerous in the attack. They've got some really good attacking options, but unfortunately just not able to get a lot of attempts on goal. But interesting enough, these 2 teams actually flipped formations when they've played each other in their last 2 fixtures. In March, Panama played a 3-4-3 and Costa Rica ran a 5-4-1. Then in June, Panama switched to a 5-4-1 and Costa Rica ran a 3-4-3. I find that very interesting. I don't know if they knew that they were going to potentially switch or if that was more of a surprise idea or what, but very intriguing that they wound up switching formations through these last 2 times that they faced off against one another. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But Panama have been in really good form. We saw them make a run all the way to the Gold Cup final. They beat the U.S. in the semis before losing out to Mexico. But they've been in this position before. They made the CONCACAF Nations League semis back in the last edition before losing out to Canada. We know that this team had their first World Cup appearance in 2018. They've been a little up and down as of late. Obviously, they missed the 2022 cycle, but I feel like Panama is headed in the right direction, and they would love to get back to the semis and also automatically qualify for Copa America. So we'll have to wait and see if they can do that. But controlling the midfield, that is going to be a huge part of these 2 fixtures for these teams coming up. And I'll tell you why. It's because in March, when Costa Rica ran the 5-4-1, they controlled possession more. And in June, when Panama ran the 5-4-1, they had a good proportion of possession in that game as well. I believe both had over around 55 to 60% possession in both of those games when they each ran that formation. So that will be interesting to see how these two teams line up. I think that's going to be an important part of this game, is controlling the midfield. But one note I'd like to point out as well for Costa Rica: when these two teams faced off in June and Panama won 2-1, Costa Rica let up 2 header goals off of 2 crosses for Panama. So Costa Rica have got to start to track runners and be, communicate better in the back in terms of not allowing runners to go free or find opportunities with aerial threats. But again, I really love this matchup between these two sides. I can't wait to predict it. It's going to be a lot of fun to see these two teams go up against each other for another 180 minutes. Another incredibly exciting matchup. It's Canada taking on Jamaica. And the last 2 times these teams faced off against one another, first was in Jamaica. It was a 0-0 draw in October of 2021. And then in March of 2022, Canada went 4-0 in a World Cup qualifier. We'll start with a 0-0 draw, though, which, to be honest, was very dull. I believe this was maybe just a friendly between these two sides. Lineups were not all that exciting either. Canada had some really good chances. They had 64% possession, 10 corners to Jamaica's 3, outshot them by 1 or 2 attempts, but just couldn't find the ball in the back of the net. But really, I don't think a whole lot were going either way in terms of this game. But Canada, of course, looked very different with their lineup in that 4-0 win. We had Kyle Larin, Tajon Buchanan, Junior Hoylett, all goal scorers in that 4-0 result. Jamaica ran a 3-4-3 in that 4-0 game, which I really don't understand why, especially considering the amount of pace and attacking power that Canada has here recently. Of course, the last couple of years with Buchanan, Hoylett, Kyle Larin, Osorio, Alphonso Davies, just so many guys that they can push forward and be so dangerous in the attack with. And I just don't understand why they would run a 3-4-3 in that scenario, especially in a World Cup qualifier. Maybe at that point they were just kind of out of it, or just wanted to be more attacking minded. But still, I just don't think it was a great idea at all. Of course, the conditions were a lot different between these 2 fixtures. Of course, the first game being in Jamaica, but the second one being up in Canada in March. It was super cold. If you go back and look at the highlights, all the guys are wearing long sleeves. Obviously, Jamaica not used to playing in that type of weather very often at all. But keep in mind, and this is a big but, Jamaica have, of course, a new attacking form. When we're talking about Leon Bailey, Antonio, Damari Gray, and some others, this Jamaican side looks more dynamic than they've ever looked before. And I was disappointed that they had a run to the semis in the Gold Cup, but I thought they would have given Mexico a better game in that semifinal run. But still, I think they're trying to figure their kinks out. Damari Gray just came over, I believe, earlier this year. The side's still young. They have a lot of opportunity to grow, especially with Blake in goal for them. But this is just such an exciting matchup between these two sides, considering both how attacking minded they are. They both have a ton of great attacking options, but in the back, both sides can sometimes be a little suspect and be a bit inconsistent. So, I would love to see these 2 fixtures open up and these teams just go at it back and forth with a lot of open space to run and exploit. But we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. Keep in mind, though, too, Canada, with that 4-0 result, that was actually, I think, the win that secured them a spot in the World Cup back in March of 2022. So, of course, they came out strong in that game, but still, I love this fixture. I think this is going to be awesome to watch these 2 teams play, with a lot on the line, of course, as well. Last matchup, we have the United States taking on Trinidad and Tobago, and certainly the most lopsided in terms of recent results that we've seen out of all of these matchups. The U.S. beating Trinidad 7-0 back in January of 2021, and then beating them 6-0 in the group stage of the Gold Cup back earlier this summer. But credit to Trinidad for getting to this point. They've had some really good results as of late to get out of that group in the first stage of this Concacaf Nations League competition, and to get to this point is phenomenal, with an opportunity that even if they lose to the U.S. in this quarterfinal, they have a shot in a single-leg playoff to still make Copa America, which would be awesome for them. But obviously the U.S. have dominated this series recently in their last 2 fixtures, and really not even put their best foot forward in terms of rosters and lineups against Trinidad. So it'll be interesting to see how these 2 teams stack up. And talking about rosters as well, Trinidad have looked totally different in terms of their roster and lineup from that 2021 game to back this past summer. And I don't know if that's maybe guys retiring, or Trinidad's just looked to turn the page and find different guys, or what. But while they still got beat 6-0, they've had some good results recently, and I don't want to take that away from them. I think they're in a better position they are now than they were 2 years ago. It's just a question if they can put it all together. But they obviously have to be better structurally in their defense. 6 goals is just way too much, especially against the U.S. side, who again wasn't even at full strength. They just were able to get beat in their back line and even in their midfield way too easily. They've got to be able to find a way to keep that tighter and just defend and communicate better all around. But of course, the U.S. are going to have to try and make Trinidad chase the game as much as possible. I know Trinidad will probably sit back, but the U.S. also have to capitalize on turnovers. Anytime Trinidad do have possession and they look to move forward, the U.S. have got to try and counter when they can and take advantage of that space. Because while the U.S. are obviously probably going to dominate in possession, we know that Trinidad, if they're smart, will probably pack it in and look to break out whenever possible. But we'll just have to wait and see how this game unfolds. Obviously, the U.S. are the strong favorites, but Trinidad just need to be competitive in that first leg if they want to have a shot in that second fixture. One more thing to get to, guys. I've not seen anything online or through my research that I've done to suggest how these matchups will unfold in terms of the winners and losers. But this is a bracket based off of the rankings that they've released here not long ago. I think is how these matchups will unfold. And then in terms of the single leg playoffs, I don't know if they're going to go back to rankings to figure out those matchups, or if it will be based off of just a draw with those 4 teams or what. But there you have it. That's how everything's going to look in my eyes, I think, for how this is going to unfold to determine which 6 teams will move on to Copa America and how we'll determine the semifinal and final for this next edition of Concacaf Nations League. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and comment down below any ideas, opinions, anything you have on this piece in terms of these teams and the matchups we've got coming up. We've got predictions soon coming for you as well, along with stuff involving the African World Cup qualifiers as well as in Asia also. So a lot coming your way here shortly. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Hope you all have a blessed day, and we will see you soon. Peace.